How you guys doing? Cool. So this is Boaz speaking with you again. Welcome to another live fashion business webinar with me, Boaz David, where my job is simply to provide you tools, tips, and resources to help you start, build, and grow a successful fashion brand. So before we start, especially for those of you who are joining this call for the first time, I just sort of want to do some plumbing around here for a second. So first of all, can everybody hear me? Can everybody see us? If you do, to the right, you'll see a little chat space. If you can just sort of like, yes, here we go. Just tell us that you can see us. Can you see us smiling? Awesome. Perfect. That's a good start. Trust me, I don't want to talk to myself. It wasn't fun. I tried it before. A little bit about the platform and how the format of this call works. So you see the screen. It's me and my guest, Berman, who I'll introduce in a second. To the right, where you guys typing already, is a chat where you can communicate with us, communicate with each other. If there's links and things, we will put them out there. Underneath the screen, underneath of where you see the both of us, there's a couple of things that I would like you to pay attention to. One of them is a little button called Ask a Question. And as you know, the format of this call is that we'll do hopefully a fun conversation between me and Stu. We'll talk about the subject of today. And at the end of that, we usually have a certain amount of time for Q&A. So anybody who has any questions about the subject, would love to answer these. In order to keep this a little bit more flowing, and some of you might have questions as we're speaking, the best way is if you click that Ask a Question, you can type in the question at any time. We will look at these questions at the end of our presentation, and we can then address them. One other thing, for those of you who might not have a question, I would still suggest for you to look at this, and because there's an option for you to rate the questions. So you might not have a question of your own, but if you look at the question, you might see questions that you would like to find an answer to, and you can rate it. And that just gives us an idea, in case we're running out of time, to know that there is priority to answer these questions. Okay. Outside of that, all I hope for you guys is to listen, enjoy, and get some valuable information from this. So I see a lot of you here. That's awesome. Some who I recognize. One fun part that I like to do at this point is to kind of see what part of the world we're reaching. So if you guys like to entertain us, can you sort of type in, tell us what part of the world are you in? Because it's going to make us feel like we're international speakers, that we talk to the whole world. It's kind of fun. All right. London, Montreal, New York. Awesome. What else we have? Philadelphia, Long Island, Idaho. Stu, does that make you nervous?
Oh,
Windsor, Canada, New Hampshire. All right. Awesome. Charlotte. And the list goes on and on and on. Awesome. So today's subject webinar is sort of an offbeat of the regular subject that I usually introduce and cover in these webinars. Normally, it's things that specifically relates to fashion business. Today, the subject is different in the sense that it doesn't really apply just to fashion business. And I think the best way to introduce the subject is kind of take you back to my personal life, probably about 10 years ago. Those of you who know me or followed me, you know that I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I've been in design, development, and production for all these years. Originally, I'm from Israel, and my dream was to come to New York and start my own fashion brand. At some point after I had my fashion brand, that goes back to about 2008, I started to realize that, it's not it's not where I want to really be. Had that experience, the dream was kind of fulfilled. I wasn't as happy. Financially, the world was going in a certain way. If any of you remember 2008, on the business end, it wasn't really what I thought it's going to be. And I kind of found myself closing the line, looking at my life, late 30s, trying to figure out what's next. As I was trying to figure out what next, one of the things that I started looking at, actually, I will admit from a perspective of, hey, maybe it will be something that I should look into doing, was coaching and working with other people and try to help other people with their lives and businesses. One thing led to another, and I started looking for more into it. I had this light bulb coming on, and I was like, oh, maybe I should really go into this and have somebody helping me figure it out instead of, trying to go into this without really know much about it. Started doing some research, found coaches online, put a small list of them, went into discovery calls with some of them. I ended up, choosing one who was actually the first call. Quite frankly, after that call, I kind of had the rest of the calls with the other people. It just wasn't the same. There was something that clicked to me. There was something in that discovery call that opened my eyes, made the wheels here move again, made me feel like, oh my God, there's something bigger here that I'm about to explore. And I just felt something bigger inside, which, I would say for your benefit and for benefit of anybody who I work with in the last 10 years, that call sort of started something else with me, which led me to start this business, which led me to start working with other people, which kind of brought me to sit here in front of you and introduce you the guy who helped me get to this stage. So I want you all to say hi to Stu Berman. Hi, Stu. How are you?
Fine, Boaz. I didn't know any of that about you, so thanks for sharing. Hello, everybody.
Here we go.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, we learn a new thing every time. So, one of the things when we talk about the fashion business in general and entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, one of the things that I think that helped me and helped anybody that I've seen around me, and as I've started to look into successful people and sort of people who did in any industry, things that they had to start pay attention to and find solutions for was kind of what goes on here. And that part was really where Stu was able to help me get clarity, help me move forward with it. And so I'm on a personal level, I'm very excited to introduce you to him. Stu, I think it will be a lot better if you can tell us sort of like a little bit about yourself. I have a few questions, but I would like the audience to know who Stu Berman is, and from there we can start a conversation. One thing I would say just about the format of this call before we get into it, as Stu will introduce himself and the things that he talks about and cover, you will see that the format of asking a question or pose some questions is part of the whole experience. So what we're going to try to do is try to do this a little bit more interactive and see how it goes. So I'd like for you guys to really be tuned, and there might be some questions that we would like to get your feedback and answers, and we kind of see where it goes. All right. So I think the introduction of my end was quite long and enough for you to understand what we're going into. Stu, I'll let you talk for a little bit and explain to us about yourself and sort of introduce us into the subject of coaching, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Awesome.
So
go ahead.
Well, I could start off by being a little weird, but letting you know that I know that it's weird. And that is when someone asks me who I am, or more importantly, when people say, who are you? Inevitably, the answer is they tell you what they do. Wondering if people have that experience. Just quickly, if you would just say yes or no, that would help me. You type in, yeah, that's what you experience when you say, who are you? They tell you what they do. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, thank you. So who I am based on being coached and growing is that I am. And what I do is separate. And so the point would be, jumping right into it, if someone doesn't like what I do, and if someone doesn't hire me, I'm okay, because it's not me. So part of the value, I hope what I bring today is to help create awareness that there is a distinction, unless you don't think so. Unless you don't think so. If you think you are what you do and someone says what you do doesn't please me, you'll be offended. Now you're offended. If you're not offended and you don't remember that, the next time you go into a sales call, you don't have that memory, you're just you. So attraction versus seduction is something that could be the pivotal point as to why you're getting someone to yes without selling. I personally have a problem with selling because it feels like coercion. It feels like you're pushing your will onto somebody else. Back to Boaz's question, what I do is coach people, and I'm pretty sure a large percentage of people have no idea what it is. They think they do, but they don't. So it's actually the dreaded question for me is, what is a coach? Oh, man, please don't ask me that. My hope for today when you leave this webinar is you have an idea of what it is and what it isn't, so that you can decide if there's value for you in exploring more of who you are versus what you do. Boaz can help you with what you do. I don't really know much about the fashion industry at all, but I know about people. That's my expertise. So the distinction is a big one. And what else would you like me to share? Because you know that there's a long history of my...
So let me maybe ask some questions. So how long have you been doing this for?
Forever. Actually,
okay.
Most coaches that have been coaching would say forever because they've been coaching, but they didn't really know what it was. But, you know, technically it's about 20 years, and professionally, full-time, it's been basically 11. Prior to that, it was part-time until I could actually financially pull off just the coaching, which was a financial engineering, because I was, as you know, Boaz, I was a retail picture framing shop. So I was a framer, now I'm a reframer. That was supposed to be funny. And the coaching has been something that's been, I guess it's just part of who I am in a way, antithetical to what I say. It's how I think, which basically is antithetical, out of the box, devil's advocate, another way to look at it, which is very helpful to me to not get stuck, overwhelmed, or if I do, the ability to catch myself doing it quickly allows me to not stay in the, let's just say, not so great place.
So, you know, I think one of the things I know from my experience when I was introduced to this and start looking into it, when people hear about this, one of the things that they automatically associate with, and I'd like for you to, in a short way, if you can, explain to us the differences, because I think that puts things in perspective, sort of like the differences between a coach and a therapist.
Very briefly, a therapist, as I understand it, will have conversations in talk therapy in particular, and bring you into the past and help you work through trauma, which I'm going to call for this conversation recovery. A coach will be more moving forward for you to go into discovery. So recovery therapy, discovery coaching. People that are with me, that are my clients, are not trying to get over something. They're not recovering from trauma. We can talk about that with the therapist. I'm actually not trained to do that. But there are blocks and recurring blocks. There's in the form of the unconscious mind. That's what real is. So, but I think we talked about this before. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a coach doing with a client a gap analysis. So here you are, actively works personally, physically, or professionally, dealing with the arenas that may require work. Identifying the blocks, recurring blocks of what stops someone from getting here to here is partly what coaches do. We identify them, and then we ask for action steps each week. We hold you accountable if you want to be. And it's like a coach bus or a stagecoach. You get on, and we move you. That's what I was doing for quite a while, which is my training. And then I realized something as I was progressing. That's good. And that's what a client needs. That's what I give them. It doesn't really change what goes on up here. It changes the behavior and it moves them. So I'm more of a mind engineer, so to speak, or an explorer about, so what do I do?
All right.
I partner with people to help them mitigate, reduce, or optimally eliminate the consequences of operating in the unconscious. When I say unconscious, it could be analogous to, unconscious could be analogous to ignorance. So an example would be driving. If someone's driving and they're ignorant, they simply don't know what yellow, green, or red lights mean. There could be consequences, meaning an accident or a ticket, something they don't want. But if they know better, they can do better. So my skill basically is listening to the unconscious mind and not telling them right away, but asking them the right question. It actually produces one of those aha moments. And then those moments that they recognize that they didn't recognize before, sequentially what happens is the thought or the awareness changes, the feeling changes, and ultimately the behavior changes. And that's how we get to where we want to be. It's more root cause coaching than it is moving. And the conclusion is, I need to speak up louder, right? I've been told that.
Yes, if you don't mind.
Well, the conclusion is that the conclusion is evidence-based. Is when people get to up here and operate up here, they reduce the consequences of not knowing. And so that's basically what I'm doing as a coach now, is producing consciousness through inquiry versus helping you move someplace and then not getting to the root cause. Does that help?
Awesome. Yep. So, I'm going to tie this to our, the subject of what we were kind of want to talk about today. The majority of our audience, my audience, are creative people who find themselves in a situation where they create a product that they're passionate about. They love it. There's all their, everything from their life to other resources such as time and money everything goes into it. And as someone who's been at that stage, who, those of you who don't know, I started as a designer and I had my own line. So the space that creative people operate in a lot of time is needing to put it in front of people and then first of all, with the intention of hopefully someone would love it enough to take their wallet out and spend money to buy it. But regardless, just, there's that element of getting feedback. And so where I thought we can kind of tie coaching into fashion business really and make it relevant for our audience is kind of talking about that space of when that creative person find themselves in a space where they need to show their line to a buyer, show their art to a buyer, show their, talk about their business to an audience, talk about their business to an investor. Even if they talk to, in our world, if they need to talk to a factory or fabric mill, somebody that they want or would like to get on their side, someone that they want to form some sort of a partnership with. And I think that, from the conversation that you and I had, and from what I know, there's a lot of weight into how that person shows up to every one of these meetings. And, we kind of summed it up in the headline as attraction versus seduction. So what I would like to kind of lead us towards is kind of get an idea from you as to, and maybe it's a bit general so we can break it down, but what is an ultimate or optimal situation for someone to be in, mindset wise, when they are in that space?
2 words for you. Easy, no, but optimal. The first one would be needless. Don't need it. And the second one would be fearless.
Interesting. How do you get to that?
I think there's many answers to that as there are people, but for those that are curious about how you could reach this place of not needing, actually not needing, and not having fear would be more introspection, and it has to require some, I think, courage. It would have to require some curiosity. It would have to require energy and time to find out. What I can tell you, which I hope some of these, all of you walk away with some tools, is that if in fact you feel fear, remember the acronym, which probably most of you know, but I'm going to say it for those that might not, is that fear is an acronym for false expectations appearing real. And unless you operate on a higher level of consciousness, and from the coach's perspective, would be to ask the right question. Can you know that it's real? What you're believing. If you're believing it and you don't ask that question, raising your consciousness, it will be real, and that's how you'll show up, and people will feel that. And if you're needing something from this meeting, it basically puts out a seduction or a trying or a lack mentality, which is not particularly attractive. So I would ask the audience of curiosity, because that's what I do, I ask questions, is if you would, what do you think, just type in your answer, is the most important thing that you'd have to do when you go into one of those meetings Boaz is referring to? So if you could help me, I'll just type in what you think the one most important thing that you must do. Anybody?
I'd love to.
Ground yourself. Anybody else? It's a good answer.
Yeah.
Presence is a really good one. Take a deep breath. That's a good one.
Great answers.
I love that one. I love that one. Find out what the other person is looking for. Confidence, love yourself. These are awesome answers. They're all great. And I don't want to actually say that you should be answering detach yourself from the outcome. Oh, damn. Yeah. So in order to detach yourself from the outcome, if you think about it, what would have to be present? But we're not going to do a coaching session other than to say the answer that I'm going to say is, be prepared for sure, is listen. So where the wheels fall off the wagon for many people selling is they're not really listening to what the person wants to know. What they're doing is telling them what they think they need. So it's really about listen to what they want to know, not what you need to tell them, which means you're actually in service to them versus either clandestinely, covertly, cryptically in service to yourself, because they can feel it. So if you're there, how can I best serve you? Am I the right person for you? Is my product the right person for you? And be more interested than interesting. You have a better chance of getting them to yes versus trying and needing and having fear. Fear from what happened in the past, which was a rejection, which of course was of you because you have no distinction between who you are and what you do. Of course, I don't know that to be true. It's true for most. And so these who-based philosophies, meaning who you are versus what you're doing, they intertwine. And when you have more clarity about who you are, wait, you say, what am I thinking? Or in a meeting, wait, why am I talking? And usually it's because I think I need to say more, because he needs more, because. Wait is the pause button. And then think, is what I'm about to say true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Those 2 tools I'd love you to walk away with is wait and think, is the pause button for you to be able to respond versus react. Now you're the more thoughtful person in the room, identifying and meeting the needs of the person across from you versus needing, wanting, needing, trying. for yourself?
I'm going to try to tie some of these things sort of like specifically into some of the things that I talk a lot about and that relates to the business as well. And because I think it will just make sense where I'll drag some of this information that you're sharing with us and relate it to the subjects that a lot of the audience is facing. One of the first things when I work with any designer is I encourage them, I push them, I sort of think it's one of the first things that they need to understand and be clear about is who is their target customer, to really understand who they are and understand what they need. Because, when you take it outside of that space of an actual meeting, generally, when you create a product for someone, and that is something that I've seen and I was guilty of as well, being in the space of being a designer, is that I think a lot of designers come into it with what they would like that person to wear, with what they like this person to have, of how they think the people out there should dress, what they should buy, how they should go about fashion in their life in general. And I will admit, it took me a very long time to understand the reverse engineering of it and understand that actually the opposite is true. Then when I know who is my target customer, now that I know who I'm talking to, I will able to give them something that will serve them a lot better than something that I just assumed that they would like. So, this is more of generally when you think about your business at the starting point where you start to form it. But I believe that it translates a lot when you actually in that specific meetings as well. So when you stand in front of a buyer, many times designers think that they need to go into that meeting and convince that buyer that their stuff is the best and it's super creative and that buyer has to have it in their store. And I will tell you a simple question that I say to every person before you walk into the store. Find out what the store is carrying. Find out what are the stuff that they actually have in their store, the price point. What is the customer type that goes into it? Because that by itself will let you know if going into the store, it makes sense or not. So, it starts really in a high level, but it goes down into that, down to the one-on-one meeting when you meet with this person. So, listening to the person that you conversing with right now, that you're kind of trying to sell to, is one of the things that Stu really taught me to do much better than I ever did. And to shut up was one of the one things that I took immediately and was super, super helpful for me. So I just wanted to kind of make that connection between what you said and to the industry that we're in. So, going back into this and just sort of like, what is the space that I want to be in? There was one fact that you shared with me at some point and repeatedly kept sharing, and hopefully I have it right, that 60% of our beliefs, our thoughts on a given day are false or based on unquestioned assumptions. And when we are in a stressful situation, as of in front of a person where we feel like the pressure to need to sell them or anything else that happens to us in our life, that actually goes up to 80 or 90%. So in a way, our starting point for the most part, for most of us, is going into a situation where we already have build up stories in our head that are based on things that are in our head, not necessarily in what happens in front of us. So I'd love to hear your, maybe you can explore this for us a little bit more, if that's possible.
Well, if I heard you correctly, you're telling me that I repeat myself. That's what I heard. So now,
In a way,
now I'm totally offended. So yeah, I've drilled that in that. What I've learned is that at homeostasis, when we're chill and our blood pressure is 120/80 or whatever is normal for us, there's a belief system that runs in the background. And the beliefs that we carry are one of 5 motivators for our behavior. I'll just quickly name them. We do what we do because we want to, because we need to. We always have a belief about it. We gravitate towards pleasure and away from pain. What makes coaching easier is just 2 of them are the ones that I'm listening for. And that's, what does my client believe in? What's their belief? And what do they need? So oftentimes the belief at homeostasis, 6 out of 10 of them have nothing to do with the truth. And without getting mathematical, 80% of those 60% don't matter. They're actually called habits. You go one way to Trader Joe's versus the other way to Trader Joe's with the idea there's 2 ways. And it's based on a belief that's unquestioned. It might not be the best way. It doesn't matter until you hit a traffic jam. You go, why did I go this way? It was an unquestioned assumption. It's the 20% of the 60% where we have collisions with reality. So when stress piles up, from exactly what Boaz says, it could be fear, false expectations, which is the same idea of beliefs. That are 3 things. It could be unquestioned, and it could be untrue, and here's the big one for the coach, is it could be unconscious. So how could I expect a client or anybody to question a belief that isn't true, that they don't even know they have? Here's where the skill of listening to the beliefs. It comes in the form of I should, she should, it shouldn't, many forms. And how they or you react when you buy into the belief that actually isn't true is one way, probably not the best way. It's an alter reality. And who would do without that belief because you've explored it, exposed it, and exploded it? 3 E's. Explore, expose, and explode these beliefs is a different way. It's a better way. And so as stress builds up from the stories, the amount of unquestioned assumptions, also fear, can actually go to 80, 90%. And even if only 20% of the 80% is a problem, that's 16 beliefs you walk into a meeting with that produce stress. You're not at your best when you're stressed. So what we want, of course, is for you to have more consciousness, which of course is me repeating myself purposely. Higher level of consciousness, lower belief systems of fear, of lack, of stories that we carry, and I'm aware of the redundancy from what happened before. So the belief that's unquestioned, that's untrue, that may be unconscious is that what happened before I got rejected really wasn't you, it was your product, but you don't have the distinctive, will happen again. And how you react inside when you go into this meeting with that belief is stress. So now your ability to listen, identify and meet the needs of your potential customer, your performance is impacted negatively. So I asked Boaz permission to tell a story, which I admit is selfish because I love telling it. But it's really about consciousness and about the power that we all have in this present moment. So I'm going to tell the story and no one can tell.
Sure, go ahead.
So I do what I want, right? This is awesome.
Yeah, it's your show.
Thank you. So hopefully it will hit you the way it hit me about, you could call it time traveling, mostly in the back, going backward to what happened and bringing it into the present, kind of screwing up your future and in that moment. So I want you to picture 2 monks, the brown robes, maybe the hood, the sandals, walking in the forest in silence and pouring rain for 4 hours. At the 4-hour mark, the 2 monks come upon a damsel in distress. It seems she can't cross this muddy divide because she doesn't want to get her kimono and slippers all muddy. So out of character, the older monk walks over, picks her up, and carries her across the muddy divide, sets her down, walks back over, and the 2 monks continue walking for an additional 3 hours in the pouring rain in silence. At the 3-hour mark, the younger monk can no longer contain himself, stops and looks at the older monk and says, "Why did you do that? You know we're not supposed to touch women." To which the older monk looked at him and said, I put her down 3 hours ago. Are you still carrying her?
That's
If you carry this last story of failure into today, it produces higher stress. When it produces higher stress, it produces beliefs that are untrue. When you operate from the untruth, your performance goes down. So you start selling because of the belief what happened 3 hours ago, 3 days ago, 3 months ago, it's going to happen today. It's not conscious, but it's in there. So what do? To mitigate, reduce, or eliminate the consequences of that is we become more conscious. Hopefully coaching one way, it's not the way, it's one way of producing higher levels of consciousness of exactly that and many other things. What do you need? What do you believe in? What are your fears? Getting more self-aware is the key to attraction versus seduction.
so, carrying previous experience into every similar future experience that you would have is, I think, something that we all do because, since we're a kid, you touch fire and you burn your finger and you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to touch fire anymore. But I guess, and sort of that's what I'm trying to kind of get is, okay, I did touch fire. I did stand in front of that person and, did my best. I was prepared. I did all the homework that I could on the technical aspects, yet got rejected, maybe even got things that kind of felt like it's personal, kind of felt like, hey, like, I don't know why I got there. Sometimes we feel that in the moment. Sometimes we don't, but definitely, many times, I know that it happened to me. I'd leave that meeting and would be terrified to go back into anything that is even similar to that situation. So, like, and I know it's a big subject, but I'm trying to kind of see if there's, few things that we can hopefully help the audience kind of grab one or two things that will make them look at it differently, at least. So I wonder what would be, because you're the master of questions, what would be a question that someone should ask themselves after an experience like that before they lead into a similar experience?
I love your question. There's two, and you can tee yourself up through the first one and then tee yourself up for the second. And that would be, which is what I would ask, if someone said to me, oh, this happened, and blah, 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 and bad things, negative things, their let's just say their propensity to self-reference. What I mean about that is make what happened about them, not their product. Why? Yes, the redundancy, because they are their product. They have no distinctive opinion, so they take it personally. Is I would say to them, I'm sorry that happened, hold the emotional space of them, instead of just jumping to the question and say, so what meaning do you attach to what happened in that room? And they tell you, I wasn't good enough, the product was blah, 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 and give you the whole reason. And that's true for them. What they don't know is another question. The question would be, what else could it mean? And there's a million things it could mean, maybe 1 million. If they don't think about what else it could mean, the propensity would be to think it about them. And now they feel that. Their self-worth goes down. Why? Their self-worth is connected to what they do. It's connected to who they are. And now they're basically saying, I was rejected. When in fact, from my perspective, you weren't rejected, unless of course you think you were, and you have no distinction between who you are and what you do. I'm aware of the redundancy. So folks, I'm aware. It's not that big a playing field if you recognize I really need to know who I am, separate from what I do. So if it doesn't go the way that I want, it doesn't mean anything about me. That self-reference piece is what puts us down. We bring it to the next meeting and we wonder why it didn't go well. It's pretty much demystified by recognizing I don't know what I don't know, and I need to be curious. So what else could it mean? He had a bad day. It wasn't the right product. He still liked you. And then you say, There's all kinds of questions. Of course, we know that I could ask, and I'm mindful of the time it's ticking by. I think the power of inquiry, and of course, it's what I do, is amazing versus you talking with a friend, family, coworker, neighbor, boss, pastor, priest, and they say things with all good intention. Well, I think, or you should, or have you thought to, about this, some sort of solution-focused response, which actually doesn't really make anything shift up here. But when you help someone as a coach, or you help yourself, look at what else is possible. The story you create is the problem. What happened is not the problem. What happened is reality. It's the take on it that's the problem. What makes it a problem is not what happened, it's how you think about it. When you change your consciousness about you think about it through this power of inquiry, there are no problems. There's just questions. Change your questions, change your life. That's what the coach, or you can coach yourself do. But what Boaz is doing basically by coaching with me, how long is it? Is it 10 or 11 years?
Yeah, probably easily 10 years.
So it's basically changing the way that you think and being aware of it. And I'm not telling anybody that I don't have those moments. What I'm saying to you is my metric for my evolution of awareness is not that I go to that place. I do. It's how quickly I, the awareness, catch myself there. And I don't stay there. I have those moments. I don't stay there. Because I'm asking myself, oh, well, she did this and it means this. Or wait, what else could it mean? And when I recognize it could mean something else, I'm off the hook.
Right. Well, I think that's really what it is. So in a way, it's basically not necessarily what happened at the moment, but how we react to it afterwards.
What happened in the moment is reality, and reality cannot be a problem. What makes it a problem is the way we think about it. If we operate here, it's a problem. If we operate here, we ask the questions that alleviate the problem. So in fact, what I would say is if you're sad, or if you're overwhelmed, or you're bummed out, and you're not crazy, then you have a self-inflicted wound, because you wouldn't consciously say, I think I'll be sad, I think I'll be overwhelmed, I think I'll be bummed. You wouldn't do that. So if you are, the description of you is unconscious or less conscious. How do you get rid of it? Raise your consciousness. How? Ask the right questions. And if you can't, and you have blind spots, you do what Boaz did. You get help with it.
So I just want to pause for a second, just kind of check in with all of you guys and see if this is sort of, I'm curious to know really, because it's a subject that, like I said, it's a little different than the normal subject that we talk about. So I wonder, just to get your feedback, if this is something that makes you think, if it's something that sounds like an interesting subject. Do you feel like you're getting the value that I think is really in this sort of exploring that world? I'm just curious for my own sake. So if any of you, yes or no, by the way, any feedback, if not, then I'll give us a feedback as well. I just like to know. So feel free to touch and kind of let us know there on the chat. Awesome. Cool. Awesome.
On my part, this is something nice. It doesn't have to be nice. It just needs to be honest.
True. That's true. But anything that gives us, because, the idea of this webinars and the idea of this, like any, to give you guys tools, quite frankly, nothing is going to be solved today or tomorrow. But I can tell you what my first call did is that it just made me look, or at least I'll say that, it made me feel like, okay, I'm in this box. Maybe I should be curious to see what else is outside this box. And that opened the whole world for me. And I think that, if there's one thing that I would like for you guys to take out of it, or at least to have, and that is my need, I guess, or my want really for you, is that it will make you just be curious about that maybe there's a different way to look at things rather than how it is. Because, if we go back into sales specifically, I can tell you this, that I grew up thinking that selling is not a cool thing. I had all the stories about what selling means, what salesperson looks like, sounds like, what he or she does, how they do things. I had a whole story around this. And I had to dig really deep into that question, and to generally, outside of that type of work, actually go even and read about sales and listen to people who sell for a living, to really kind of explore that and understand, hey, you know what? There's other ways for me to look at it. And it's really when I started to feel comfortable with doing it and doing it the way that I felt comfortable. And it became really sort of like the subject of this webinar, where I came into it came into it later from a perspective of attracting people into what we do rather than needing to chase them and sort of force them to be part of our community. And it's been, first of all, on a personal level, it's been a lot more fun, you know. And that's, quite frankly, this is the idea of this whole webinar, is to share with you guys what I know, what I've experienced, bring on people that have their own expertise and experiences, and let them share it with you. You know, not necessarily from the perspective of like, hey, you need to hit a button at the end and you know, pay with a credit card for the information that you get, but really try to give you things to see what you need. And the whole interaction is to put things out there and to listen. Your feedback is very important to me many times. So, you know, because it helps me understand what are the subjects that you might be feeling like you need help with. So, you know, again, I'm just trying to take this big subject and break it down to spaces that might feel more comfortable for you guys in the business situation or space that you are in now. You know, I think one of the things that I've learned is, and we talked about, is really listening. And, you know, there was one thing that Stu said at one point that just made it simplified, a lot more simple for me, was that, you know, when you're talking, you're not listening. It is as simple as that. So, you know, if Stu would talk to me now and I'm keep on putting all these words out there, most likely I might hear his voice in the background, but I would not have the attention and the capacity to listen to the details of what he's trying to convey to me. And I cannot tell you how many times in a situation where when you want to sell something to somebody, that could be very important, because you can go into that meeting and kind of, you know, you had a whole presentation there. You're showing the line in a certain way. You're talking about, you know, the great things about your product and how it solves problems and does these things. And the buyer might give you one detail that can, and I've seen it and experienced it as well, who can really take your business to the next level. And if you pay attention to that small feedback, you know, where that buyer can tell you, you know what, if you would just take that and twist it like that, I'd buy it from you. That might be what 100 buyers after that is looking for. So, you know, I know for myself, when you're in that space, the tendency is, or the assumption is that, you know, space of when there's no talking, when it's quiet, is a scary space to be in. It's a space where you feel like, I got to say something because otherwise, blah blah blah. You know, oh my God, this is quiet. What are they thinking? You know, we start creating these stories, and I think that's, I know that that's pretty much what Stu is trying to make us all understand. So hopefully you guys can see it from that perspective as well. You know, we're reaching sort of like the hour mark. So what I'd like to do is, just because I know some of you block this hour and need to move after that, I'll be happy to take it more if you guys want to, but I would like to at least the next 10 minutes dedicate to questions from you guys. And then if there's, you know, if you guys would like, we can trust me, Stu and I can keep talking for a long time. We're both very intrigued by these subjects. But at least I'd like to have those of you who has a limited time get valuable information from here. And regardless, this recording is going to be available for you. So you will get it in the next 24 hours. So if you missed something or you had to leave, you still have access to it. All right, so I'm going to try and go into some questions and see if you guys have any specific questions about this. So I see anybody wants to type anything. More so, I will say, if any of you, it's an open invitation. If any of you would like to come up on the call now with us, I can invite you. It doesn't have to be a video. It could be a voice for a conversation, and so we can have an interaction. More than welcome. Just type in, and I will invite you to the screen.
Who out there is fearless? Is what we want to find out.
True. So one of the things that I see here, it's not necessarily a questions, but Rich is asking, saying, it seems that self-worth is at the foundation of all this. What do you think, Steve?
I think I know who that is. That's what I think.
So yes, I absolutely, and as I said, is self-worth is not something that happens overnight. I think that's one other thing that I would just like to leave you guys with. It's, as you hear, I've been in that space for about 10 years, and I still feel like I only did this. It's work in progress. And it's more of like the commitment to be there on a regular basis and want to discover this and build that self-worth component. So yes, I think it is. I think Stu definitely agrees. If there's something, Stu, you want to add to it, that'd be great as well.
Well, the self-worth bottom layer would be, I am my product, and you're basically telling me no, and you're afraid of the no. And it really is not the rejection of the product, but the rejection of you, which, of course, who likes that? I don't. But if I have an identity that's clear about the distinction between who I am and what I do, there's no offense. You actually could think about what it would be like for you to be unoffendable. And imagine what it would be like to go into a meeting truly unoffendable. It seems that perhaps there would be no responding to Jane. It said, "Oh, so true, dead space makes me start talking," great reminder. That could be silence, and he or she's thinking something bad about me. That could be the default. There's an unquestioned assumption. If you don't question it, but you're conscious of it, it's going to make you talk more. And now who's that about? That's about you trying to make something happen, filling in the dead space from an assumption that is not questioned. It may not be true. The question the coach would raise, is it possible that that's what your client or prospective client needs? And if it's possible, what would happen? What's the worst that would happen if you stayed silent and gave them the space? Of course, we don't know. Without asking the question, you'll continue to talk and perhaps talk yourself right out of the sale. I don't know if that helps Jane, but that's what oftentimes people do. Self-worth connects to self-care. So as the self-worth is low, the self-care is also low. So that means the self-care and the self-talk is, oh, I'm an idiot. I can't believe I did that. Chipping away at our worth. But if we have a distinction between, and where I'm saying this is the who piece. That may be heady for our audience. I don't know. No one's saying, yeah, keep talking about the head stuff. That's the real estate I work in, not in the clothing business. What do you do? Negative thought comes in.
So I just before you go into it, just for a second, I really want to give a credit here to another person. So at the same time that I met Stu, I kind of reconnected with another person who had a lot of influence on really where I am now, and the fact that I'm doing this webinar. And it's Jane Hamill. A lot of you probably know it. And I just, she wrote something here in the comments. She's one of the best sales and marketing experts that I know of. So I just sort of felt the need to give her credit here as well. Go ahead, Stu. Actually, we can go into that question. Yeah.
Responding to what Corey asked, which is, what do you do when a negative thought comes into your mind? That's a great question. I suppose not the wise guy answer would be is, if you aren't the thought, if you notice the thought, you're the noticer of the thought, not the victim of it. So quickly, which we didn't talk about, is in the story of the let's say the sales meeting. If you start to feel bad, you can notice the drama triad. There's three characters there. One of them would be you, which is the victim, and them, which is the perpetrator, because they didn't say yes. And then you may leave the room looking for a rescuer. And if you call me or Boaz, I'm not going to rescue you. What I'm going to do is help you basically convert you with the questions that I ask into your own rescuer, which means that basically the perpetrator dies. There's no oxygen in the room for them because that story doesn't fit. So I have negative thoughts. If I said I didn't, I'd be lying, and I don't lie. But if I'm the noticer of them as an identity, then I can't be the victim of them. So it's the practice. It's kind of like a noun and a verb. You have to practice, and it's a practice, a spiritual practice or an awareness practice. Oh, I noticed that I was thinking that, and I'm the noticer, which is why meditation is oftentimes in those spiritual books promoted, suggested. To practice noticing the thoughts that inevitably come across your mind and just notice them. And if you want to, you can dismiss them. If you don't and you become them, now you are your thought. You better have good thoughts all day long, which nobody does. So victim, rescuer, perpetrator, you can become your own rescuer by raising your consciousness, noticing it, and deciding what you want to do about it. Is that true? Who would I be without that thought? It's an inner narrative that replaces, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, all the things that took away at what Rich asked about, which is the self-worth.
Awesome. For those of you who found this interesting and would like to explore Stu's world a little bit more, I will type in here his website for you guys to look him up a little bit more and find out more about what you do. If you want to contact him and get a free discovery session, just under the screen, there's a green button that will take you to his email. Or, I will also include this information in the follow-up email to this, just in case someone is interested more in that. We have another question here that's sort of related to what we talked about, but specifically kind of going back into, our industry. And Cheryl is asking, in this industry, what value do you give to the feedback of influencers? And I think it's a great question because just from the word influencers, the reality is their job is to influence how we think. It's to influence our actions. It's honestly, if you break it down, that's pretty much what their job is. And if I would take try to answer this, and Stu, you know what influencers are, right?
Yeah, you're one of them.
But the idea is that if I look at a feedback, and I think that's sort of one way to look at things, is when I sit in front of somebody or present something to somebody or even send an email and I get feedback, a lot of time I try to think of that feedback outside of just reading the words there, to try to sort of, as much as I can, to think where they come from. For what I can tell. So when it comes to influencer, I personally look at it and I know that, some of the way that they might need to say things or do things is part of their job. It's just how they do things. It's, if they give me a feedback, it's coming from their perspective. In other words, it's not necessarily has to do with me. It might have been part of what they feel their job to do is. It might be that from their perspective, they actually thought that they've given me something very useful. And they might have, that they think that a lot of times we go into a meeting with somebody and it sort of feel like that person is just kind of talking about themselves or just giving us what they would do in our shoes. It's very common, but it's not necessarily that person is, doesn't think about us or don't care for us. Actually comes to, I think, a lot of times from a space that they really actually care. They want, their way of putting stuff out there is just how they know to do it. So my short answer to that, my long answer to that question is that separation between who you are and yourself and that answer and feedback is where you can find new space to operate from. Because if you start attaching that feedback to yourself, and it doesn't really matter where it's come from, this is where the mess starts to happen.
It goes back to what Rich asked. It chips
Right.
away at work. From a place, think about it. One would think from a place of low self-worth, you operate on one way, and from a place of high self-worth, you operate the other. What we want in sales, if that's the word, is high self-worth produces the needlessness, that produces the fearlessness. And then I admit to you, it's a little wise guy thing that I say, but I'm going to share it anyways, is that if it doesn't work out for me with a client, mostly because they don't fit the perfect client profile to me, the ideal client, curious, interested, hopeful, positive, upbeat, is if it doesn't work out, I just say, next. I don't take it personally. I don't do it in a hurtful way. But the next actually has a mentality to it. It's not just dismissive or being a wise guy. I know there will be a next. That's a belief that I carry. And when I believe that there's a next, there's no neediness, there's no trying, there's no selling, it's just the next one. So it's really about what is the attitude, what is the gratitude, what's the space, how much of what I'm thinking is true, how much of it did I bring from 3 hours ago, 3 days ago, from when I was a kid, and who am I really, what's my story, and where I come in, while I'm interested in that, I'm more interested in who you be without the story. The story is the anchor. The story is the unquestioned assumptions. The story is the unconscious. And as we raise the consciousness to become more what Boaz is the better version of yourself. And here's the best part of it, is you can inspire others to do the same, not by telling them anything, but by just being that person for your children, for your friends, for your family, for all your aforementioned people, and that's attraction.
It's true. That component of inspiration, I think, is a big one that we didn't really touch on as much. But yes, when you're inspiring people, you make them feel good, and when someone feels good, whatever they do is going to be good. That's my belief. Yeah. So, anybody else have any other questions that relates to that subject that we're talking about today? If you do, if anybody wants to come and talk to us, I know it's a deep thing, but you might have a couple of questions. Please let us know. If not, then I'm sort of just try to summarize our call today, and the idea was to, quite frankly, I hope that happened to some of you, if not all of you, where my goal was to separate you from thinking just about thinking about your next sales meeting as just a sales meeting where I have to get my product right and I have to know what to say and I have to know when to say it and I just have to go and get the job done. And maybe look into, hey, there might be some other things there that I can do. There might be a different way for me to look at it. Maybe there's, because at the end of the day, all of these things will make you more attractive. They will make you more inspiring. They will make you, first of all, quite frankly, regardless of anything else, they will make you feel better. You're going to feel good. And I think that what it did to me and what I would like for anybody who finds themselves in the situation is that when they go into this next meeting, it becomes enjoyable rather than, oh my God, I got to get this. Oh my God, I got to get this. That was my experience. The guy next to me right here helped me get to that space. I hope I was able to, or we were able to kind of open that for you guys as well. And I see that there's more questions, so we're going to go into it. Is that all right, Stu? Can we stay for a couple more minutes?
Absolutely. Love it.
All right. So Jane Hamill is asking us, how do you suggest someone starts building up their self-worth? Strategies to start.
That's a great question. The wise guy answer is hire a coach, and the other answer is there's many answers to that as there are people. The story that you tell yourself, of course, is the only way your self-worth can go low. So what's your story? How much of it is true? How curious about that are you? And how do you make a distinction between who you are and what you do? Mostly self-worth does come from accomplishments. I would probably say I'm guilty of that. So if we don't accomplish or we fail, it chips away. So if we were able to answer the question, if we were able to say, my value comes from who I am, and here's what I do, that's a great way to do it. How?
So in a way, yeah, we're going back to kind of what you started with, that question of like when someone asks you, what do you do? How to answer that.
Well, I told you it's the dreaded question because it's sort of like someone that has never tasted strawberries and I'm eating one and they say, what do they taste like? And I go into a diatribe about it and they walk away with words versus here, taste them and then they know. So in all honesty, that's why I offer the complimentary session so that they can actually taste the strawberry and say, is this for me? And it's not for everybody. It's not. It's only for those who are curious and those that are willing to actually take a look at themselves and find out what are these unquestioned assumptions I walk around with and how do they actually chip away at my self-worth? Who would I be without the story is based on, of course, the willingness to find out. The thing I think was amazing and inspiring for me, Boaz, is that your courage to go to the place that most people don't go has brought you up in your consciousness. And I've watched your joy go up. And so if you're selling and you're loving what you're doing, don't sell the product, sell the love of the product. You don't love the product because you are the product and you don't like it because someone rejects you. You've got what I call a dirty laundry cycle. So Jane asked, how do you suggest someone starts with building self-worth? Create an identity that's separate from what you do and recognize it's not what I do. Here's the problem with identification with form. I'm going to call form what you do, your title, your role, your position in life, your appearance. I'm 65 years old. I definitely don't look like I'm 35. If my value came from my looks, I'd probably be in bed. I'm not saying I think I look bad. I'm saying I don't look 35. So my value comes from who I am, not what carries me around. My value comes from who I am, not from what I do. And if people like it, awesome. And would I tell you that it doesn't make me feel good? No. But if in fact someone doesn't hire me or someone leaves, I could actually take it personally and chip away at my self-worth. Now I'm the guy trying to help you build your self-worth who doesn't have it himself. So there's no direct answer because there's individual people with different needs, wants, and beliefs. But I basically would say to you, raising your consciousness to your story, finding out how much of it's true and how much you want to keep, helps build your self-worth. I hope that answers the question again, or to anyone else that was curious. Does it, Jane? Does it?
I actually would add. So, if you don't mind, I want to share something that I sort of like helped me with that. And actually, it started long. I think even before you, it just clicked to me that this is what happened. Is one of the things that helped me is to sort of take inventory and think about. You open your closet. I'll relate it to fashion. You open your closet and you look at the stuff that you really like, that you want to wear every day. The things that you're like, I really don't like. I don't want to wear this anymore. I think this is a good starting point. Again, you kind of need to have the courage to open that closet and look inside and sort of be honest with the inventory that you take. But that was one tool that helped me.
Well, it's scary to do it.
It is.
And so what do we need? We need courage, which means I'm afraid that I'm going to do it anyway. So how do people build their courage muscles? It depends on the person. I do know this, without sounding too coachy. Your life and your business will expand based on your willingness to experience discomfort. You want to stay safe? You want to be attached? I can't stop you. But if you're curious about what else is possible, and it might actually create some discomfort, that's where the growth takes place. I can't stress enough that people that are stuck in business that think it has nothing to do with them, I would beg to differ. I would say that personal development and professional development are simply not mutually exclusive. They're completely and totally bound together. So as a leadership development coach in some rather lofty companies, what I've noticed in the last 20 years is those who are willing to look at themselves, their blind spots, their needs, their unquestioned assumptions, makes them a better leader. And as a better leader, there's better soldiers. With that soldiers, there's better leaders. It changes the culture of the company. And if your company is just one and you're the leader, by exploring all these things we've talked about that are here and bringing you here, knowing better allows you to do better, produces more sales, produces more traction, everybody.
Awesome.
These are conclusions that are evidence-based. They're not just speak on imagination. It's basically me seeing of why would a company retain my services. It's not my good looks or my hat, it's the coaching. And it's creating awareness where there wasn't through inquiry. That's what it is. And those that are curious think better than those that aren't. Would you agree?
I do.
Right now, you're the only person that I can see.
All right. So, you have 100% success with who you're talking to. I think we don't have any more questions from what I see. And, on that note, I'd like to thank you very much, Stu. Thank you for taking the time and being here today. Awesome. Janine, thank you. I hope that we were able to open some closets for some people. I guess the message would be courage, or have courage, be curious, and life will show you where it can take you from there. Thank you very much, everybody. I will see you guys next time. I will send the recording and we'll likely also ask for some feedback. So enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we will see you very soon. And good luck with your business, whatever you're doing.
Yes, good luck. And
all right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stu.
Okay, Boaz.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.